Should you use consequences for a child that is having a tantrum that is less about emotional overwhelm and more about getting what they want? My name's Jodie Thornton, and today we're going to talk about the idea that sometimes when your child is having a tantrum, but it's not actually driven by their overwhelm, that this can be seen as a manipulative tantrum, and a lot of people will recommend that you use consequences. And I'm going to walk you through how that works and what we can do. What's the most constructive thing we can do to help your child not choose a tantrum as a way to get what they need. So if we think about how a tantrum starts, whether it's a manipulative one or an overwhelm one, what happens is your child has a need come up. Somewhere in their inner workings, they notice that they need something, a genuine, deep need. Then your child's emotional system sends a signal to say there's a need that's not being met here. And that is your child's feelings. And when that feeling comes up, that is meant to be a signal to your child, we need to do something to get this need met. And then what will happen is if your child knows how to get that need met effectively, they'll choose that. If they don't know how to get that need met reliably and effectively, then they can do a few things. Sometimes they'll just try something random. Sometimes they'll try something that they've seen other children or even other adults do. People don't grow out of tantrums. So I'm sure you know adults that have tantrums these days. So they're looking for, and sometimes it'll be random, right? It's just whatever comes up. It's like, what could I possibly do to get this need met? And so when we come in and say, I understand this is important to you, but if you continue with this behavior, I'm not going to give you what you want. And also I'm going to give you a consequence for this behavior. I'm going to make your life more difficult if you continue to make this choice. The idea is that we're helping them to see that this is not an ideal choice. But here's the thing. They already know it's not the ideal choice because the need is not getting met, right? We just don't need to give them more problems. We don't need to do what the old school parenting would be like, very overt. I'll give you something to cry about, right? It's like, I'm going to make your life more difficult if you continue to make this choice. Whereas if we show them this is the behavior you can choose in order to get the need met in a way that works for everybody else that's involved, they will choose that because it's more effective than the tantrum. And it's even more effective than if they were to tantrum and you were to acquiesce every single time. A behavior that gets the need met without a tantrum, whether it's the manipulative kind or the overwhelm kind, or I should say attempted manipulative kind, regardless of which kind of tantrum it is, if there's a strategy that gets the need met without the tantrum and that works for everybody else that's involved, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more enjoyable for your child, and they will choose it. Sometimes they might need a little help to get into the habit of it, but we're looking for getting the need met. And here's where we can get a little bit stuck because sometimes they'll have tantrums for things that don't appear to be needs. And I say appear to be needs because it's always driven by something valid. It's always driven by a need that is underneath what appears to be the issue. And what our child is looking for is that they think that if you buy me this toy, my need will be met. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. Sometimes kids assume that that will work and sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But let's say the need is to matter. I don't want to know that I matter to you. So I want to know that when I tell you that I want you to buy something for me, I want you to know that you'll say yes because I matter to you. Now, getting that toy is just one way to get the need met. So if you can't afford the toy, if you choose not to spend your money on toys, if your child has 50,000 toys and does not need another toy and you're choosing to demonstrate it in a different way, if you have an environmental concern that giving them this toy as a way to show that they matter to you is actually causing an environmental issue because you're using more and more single-use plastic, all of these reasons are really valid reasons to say, let's look for another way for that need to get met. So that's our first step, is actually to, instead of looking for a consequence that helps our child see that their strategy is not ideal, we want to get clear on what it is that is the need. So the very first job when your child is having a tantrum and you think it's because they're trying to get what they want rather than that they're emotionally overwhelmed. You want to get to a place where they feel heard. So it's like, do you want me to buy you this toy because we've had such a busy time? You really want to know that what's important to you is important to me, right? Now, I use a lot of words. You don't have to use a lot of words, but you can see the point is I'm getting across to my child that I'm checking, is this important to you because you need me to know, you need to know that you matter to me. And that's an opportunity for your child to explain that, no, you've not understood, or yes, that is why this is important to me. And your next job is to explain to them, what is the real reason you can't do what they're asking? So in this example, you don't have the money. Now, you want to be careful age appropriately explaining that you don't have the money. You might say, oh, we don't have money in the budget for some toys this week. That could be one way to put it. Another way is, we're not going to be buying any toys today. And so that has less of the there's not enough money kind of connotations to it. You can say you've used your pocket money, if that is true. So we're looking for an explanation of why, and then why would you not want to do it? So I don't want to spend the money on this toy because you want to use your money for other things, you're saving up for a holiday, you know, whatever the thing is, you want to give a real reason of why you're not going to give what they want. And then before you let that land, like, we don't want to just leave that as you're just not going to get what you want. What we want to go to is, I want to find a way that works for you to feel really, really important. Like, what's important to you is really important to me, but without spending money. Or if it's the environmental issue, without us creating more plastic in the world, right? You're looking for, this is what I'm looking for. Now, if you have an idea of how to do that, suggest it. If you don't have an idea, then you're going to say, we're going to keep thinking about a way for this to work. Or if you have any ideas, I just know that it can't involve buying something, or it can't involve plastic, or it can't involve whatever's the important reason as to why you want to say no, then you're going to explain that. So this all being the case, if you have checked with that you've understood the child's need, you've explained to your child the reason they can't have what they want, and you have offered a suggestion of what could get their needs met while that working for everybody else, for a number of reasons, you could end up with your child having an emotional overwhelm tantrum. And this is because there's a few steps involved here. And if you haven't yet set it up with your child that you're a problem-solving team, then they can get stuck anywhere along the way. So it might be even just confirming what's going on for them, like what is the need, that could send them into a tantrum if they don't yet have the emotional awareness to know what it is that's important to them. Then they may be fixated on saying to you, no, it is about the toy, I need the toy, I have to have the toy. That can send them into an emotional overwhelm tantrum. Moving on to when you give them the real reason, if they don't yet trust that you're telling the truth, and the reason they might feel that way is if you've got a lot of experience of doing more traditional parenting, where often we will say things that are not necessarily the real reason. So for example, people will say to a 3-year-old, you have to clean up after yourself because it's important that you learn to be responsible. It's not really that important for a 3-year-old to learn to be responsible. You can totally be wanting to encourage and foster that, but it's not the real reason that they need to clean up this particular mess on this day, right? And so if they're used to you doing the more traditional parenting where we bring in these abstract concepts or these things that are not necessarily relevant to the current issue, then they may think that you're just trying to tell them that what they want is not important. And so then that can send them into an emotional overwhelm tantrum. And then if you make a suggestion that they don't like and they're not used to, we're going to stick with this, we're going to be able to work through until we find something that works for both of us, that can send them into an emotional overwhelm tantrum. So just all these steps along the way where you can actually end up shifting from what started out as I'm using this tantrum to get what I want into a now I actually am overwhelmed. So that being the case, you might want to learn the steps of helping a child to calm down and shift out of the emotional overwhelm and into the constructive space. using their rational brain. And in my webinar, Supporting Kids Through Tantrums, that's where I'll teach you the body language to use, the tone of voice to use, the word choice to use to help your child to really calm their emotional regulation, so that then they can problem solve in this way, where we look at what's the real need, and then how do we find a way for this to work. So if you'd like to check that webinar out, it's free and you can download it at jodythornton.com/tantrums, and hopefully that will really help. If you have any questions at all about this particular video around what looks like a tantrum to manipulate you versus what looks like an emotional overwhelm tantrum, please do comment in the comments box of this video.